Good morning. It is Monday and we are at school. By the time you all see this, you will have already seen the first part of this vlog. But for me in this moment, like, none of you have seen it yet. I guess we'll see what you guys think. I realized last night when I was editing that I had like my dates on here written wrong. Oops. I did do a little more reading last night though. So I am currently on page 125, start of chapter 13. We're definitely starting to examine some interesting thematic ideas. There's been a lot of talk about bias because the scythes have to like kill so many people per year, like they have to meet a certain quota, but they're not allowed to be biased in who they choose to glean. Also, with everyone being immortal, there's been some interesting comments about religion and how that's been impacted now that nobody has to really worry about dying, except that they do because they could still be gleaned by the scythes. There was an interesting section also about compassion versus obligation, though I might talk more about that at some point. Good versus evil, corruption of power, competition and not wanting to fail. Then of course we've got like some hints at our little romance that's probably going to be happening. Lots to talk about, but I do have some things that I want to get done this morning, so I will probably check in with you guys sometime after school. And it is after school. Okay, so I have my book bag. By the time you guys are watching this, you've had a couple days of reading your book, so I hope that that's going well so far. Between sort of checking in with a few students during each class, I did read some more of my book. So I'm currently on page 144. Yeah, just about to start chapter 14. And I actually need to update my pages. All right, math. 16, 17, 18, right? I think I read 18 pages. Even though for the past couple of days I technically haven't hit my daily goal, I'm still like well ahead of where I should technically be for this week. So my guess is that some of you will also be that way, where you're sort of staying ahead of your daily or weekly goals. So let's go ahead and talk about focus number 2 for this week, which is plot and structure. Our focus question asks, what is the most important event in the story so far and why? What prompted the main character to act as they did? So at the start of your story, you usually have some kind of like exposition where you're being introduced to the setting, your characters. You're getting some of that backstory or background information. Hello, Lily. Okay, anyway, at some point in your story, there's going to be some major event or conflict or problem that your main characters are going to encounter. That's probably going to serve as the catalyst for the rest of the story, meaning that it's what's going to help push the story forward. Hello, can I help you? Hello, I have an interesting half bun going on today, but we're just gonna roll with it. I have not read any more of this since I last updated you guys, but that is fine because we actually should probably talk about some of what I've been reading before I move on. So yesterday I mentioned that our second focus is on plot and structure. and that our question is essentially asking what the most important event is that's happened in your book so far. So I thought that I would go back into my notes and pick out a few sections to talk about. I'm sort of highlighting what I think is the most important event so far, and then also giving some details about how our main characters sort of react to that event. So remember that our main characters for this are Citra and Rowan, and I think that the most obvious, most important event that has happened, at least at the start of this, was when they have a meeting with this Scythe who basically tells them that he's chosen them to be his apprentices. I have chosen both of you. You will both learn the trade, but in the end, only one of you will receive the ring. The other may return home to his or her old life. So Scythes wear this like special ring, and so if you become a Scythe, you get a ring. Oh, this was also the same part that I mentioned before where he was like, yeah, like if you want to kill people, you obviously should not be a Scythe, but if you don't want to kill people, then you should be a Scythe. You are both made of the highest moral fiber, and I believe the high ground on which you stand will compel you into my apprenticeship, not because I force it upon you, but because you choose it. So now Citra and Rowan have to each decide if they want to actually take on this apprenticeship and learn how to become Scythes to then potentially actually become a Scythe, but only one of them can in the end. So now they're in like this weird competition with each other. But obviously we wouldn't have a story if they didn't agree to be apprentices. So they both agreed to be apprentices. At first, Citra is like immediately offended that this Scythe has asked her to be his apprentice, but it's clear that she still wants to be successful. Citra had to tell herself that there was an out. She could fail to perform. She could be a lousy apprentice. She could sabotage herself so completely that the honorable Scythe would be forced to choose Rowan and return her to her family at the end of the year. The problem was that Citra was very bad at doing things half-assed. It would be much harder for her to fail than to succeed. So Citra is obviously here for the competition and is just like, if I'm gonna be a Scythe, I'm gonna be a Scythe. Rowan, on the other hand, I think is a lot more mellow than Citra, and he has a bit of a different reaction. For Rowan, the decision wasn't quite so difficult. Yes, he hated the thought of being a Scythe. It sickened him. But what sickened him more was the thought of just about anyone else doing it. He didn't see himself as morally superior to anyone, but he did have a keener sense of empathy. He felt for people, sometimes more than he felt for himself. So they both have these different sort of approaches to Scythedom, and I've read enough that they're like kind of in their training right now. If I had to pick which character I think would maybe like make a better Scythe, or like which one I think should win the Scythedom, I would maybe say Rowan, because I think that he is gentler and like more patient than Citra is. Citra's kind of a hothead. But my real prediction is that somehow they're both going to become Scythes, or like change the system of like Scythes. I'm also definitely seeing like the rise of another conflict. So I went ahead and added the parts of the text that I just talked about to my double entry notes in my reading log. This is also the same part of the story where the Scythe is like, I will not tolerate any romantic notions between the two of you, so banish the thought from your mind now. And Citra and Rowan are just like, and I'm just like, I will go ahead and turn things back over to you guys so that you can get some reading done. Don't forget to be paying attention to plot and structure. Okay, it honestly wasn't until this exact moment that I realized there's a face on this side and there's another face. Happy reading, and I will talk to you guys later.